Now, before we start talking about React Native testing library specifically, I wanted to create a unit test visually. I wanted to visually display how writing unit test would look like. And here I have the 5 test cases that I want to test, and I have one component here, login screen. And here uh, we'll have for every component. So here we are writing tests for every component specifically, the unit test. And now we have this component, we have a group of tests, and that group will be called login screen tests. And inside of that, we'll have 5 tests. And here, first test, here we are describing this is the name of the test. The description button should be disabled. So if username and password inputs are empty, so if we did not input anything in a username and password input fields, this button should be disabled. And we could test that by by having disable attribute on a button, checking it if that is true, and or having some type of color. So if, for example, if a button is disabled, it should have background color of blue, and if it's not disabled, it should have a background color of green, for example. And we test that. So first, check the username and password, check if they are empty. Then if they are empty, button should be disabled, so attribute should have attribute disabled to be equal to true. Then we have login should fail. Why it should fail? If username and password are empty and button is clicked, error should be shown. So we have the empty input of username, and then we have the empty input of password. We click submit, and since username and password are empty fields, we should provide an error for them to say you need to input something in this inputs in order for this to be valid. And we could display some type of alert. And this works pretty similarly in React Native. In React, for example, on the web, you could display some window that alert to tell the user, this isn't working. On React Native, you also have alert from React Native that comes default by default. So yeah, that concept is pretty similar if you worked with React.js maybe. Here, then we have another test case, login should fail again, if username and password are not long enough. So for example, we want username to be at least 5 characters long and password to be at least 8 characters long. And then we input the username for 4 characters inside of this. And then, for example, below that input, we want to display for the user, the username must be at least 5 characters long. And then for the password, we input 7 characters. And then it should display for below the password input, password should be at least 8 characters long. Okay, then we have another login should fail test case, and this time is because the password does not satisfy the pattern that we provided. So for example, we can provide some regular expression to see if the password contains enough numbers, special characters, capital letters, or stuff like that. And if it does not match that regular expression, we'll provide an error, for example, below this input, or we'll throw an alert to the user saying password should contain this many number of special letters or whatever. And then we have the last test case, the fifth one. Login should work this time, but not in the sense that we are checking with the server, does API handle that correctly? We are just here, we'll probably do a mock. So for example, if we have that function for authentication, and that we are, for example, using some type of library to work with our API. So for example, we are working with AWS and we have some type of wrapper library that we are working using to interact with the API. We are going to mock that library. So we are not going to use real functionality here. We are just going to create mock functionality, some function that returns nothing. So for example, we'll do just like this. So here, instead of api.get, do not use that logic. We are just going to, instead of that, we are just going to use this. So it will be a callback function which does nothing, but it will not fail because it does nothing, so it can't fail. So we are just using that mock logic. So here, API get, for example, we just put it like this, like a callback, and it does nothing. It will not fail. So, but here we just check that username and password are long enough, and the password matches the pattern, and that's what's important. And submit button is not disabled since we inputted the right thing that satisfies the criteria. And then does it work with API? We can check that with our integration test, but here we are only concerned about our username, password input, and the submit button. I hope that's clear how unit tests are structured inside the testing file. So we have that one testing file where we have the one component, and then we are describing the test cases that we want to test. I hope that's clear, and I'll see you in the next one.